In ICD-10-CM, lipid disorder combination coding is little bit tricky and confusing, as we are having different codes for each and every lipid disorder. So most common lipid disorders we will encounter in ICD-10-CM are hyperglyceridemia, hyperlipidemia, hypercholesterolemia, mixed hyperlipidemia, and also other hyperlipidemia. As we are having different variations of lipid disorders, it is very difficult to code combination codes using all these conditions. But it is not that much difficult as you think, as in this video we are going to learn how to code ICD-10-CM lipid disorder combination codes using a chart. If you are visiting for the first time, please click on subscribe button to receive future updates, and also if you want to learn and get rid of fear of coding lipid disorders, watch this video until the end. Always my intention is to share knowledge, gain knowledge. If anyone looking for free AAPC CEO webinar links, medical coding jobs in India, USA and UAE including Dubai, join in our WhatsApp group. Group link is in the description of this video. So now we will come into important concept in this session. So here scenario and action. So if you take serial number 1, here patient is having hyperglyceridemia and hyperlipidemia. So how do you code this scenario? Here we will code only hyperglyceridemia alone. Okay. So why means these are the combination codes. If you go to interviews, they will ask you. So how do we code? For example, they will ask you hyperlipidemia and other hyperlipidemia. So that time you need to code only hyperlipidemia. Okay. So for you, for example, if you go to interview, they will ask you how do you code hypercholesterolemia and hyperlipidemia. So here we need to code only hypercholesterolemia. And again they will ask you how do you code hypercholesterolemia and other hyperlipidemia. So here also we need to code hypercholesterolemia, as hypercholesterolemia is more specific than hyperlipidemia. And again they will ask you how do you code hyperlipidemia and lipoprotein deficiency. So here in this situation you need to code both hyperlipidemia as well as lipoprotein deficiency. And also if you take 6th scenario, mixed hyperlipidemia and other hyperlipidemia. So here you need to code mixed hyperlipidemia. And if you take 7th one, familial combined hyperlipidemia and other hyperlipidemia. So how do you code this scenario? Here you need to code familial combined hyperlipidemia. And one more combination code is hypercholesterolemia with hyperglyceridemia. So here you need to code mixed hyperlipidemia. So next scenario, mixed hyperlipidemia and familial hypercholesterolemia. How do we code here? We need to code mixed hyperlipidemia. So for example, if the patient is having mixed hyperlipidemia and hyperlipidemia, how do we code this one? Obviously we need to code here mixed hyperlipidemia only. Why means mixed hyperlipidemia is more specified than unspecified hyperlipidemia. Next, here patient is having mixed hyperlipidemia and hypercholesterolemia. So here also you need to code mixed hyperlipidemia. For example, patient is having mixed hyperlipidemia and hyperglyceridemia. So how do we code here? We need to code mixed hyperlipidemia. So for example, in the last scenario, if the patient is having mixed hyperglyceridemia and mixed hyperlipidemia, how do we code here? We need to code both E78.3 and E78.2. So here, if you want to code these combination codes very easily, first you need to know the differences between hyperlipidemia, hypercholesterolemia, hyperglyceridemia, lipoprotein deficiency, as well as mixed hyperlipidemia and familial combined hyperlipidemia. So in this way, if it is possible, mark this chart and you can use this chart whenever you code these hyperlipidemia combination codes. Most importantly, we will get this hypercholesterolemia and hyperlipidemia. So that time we need to code hypercholesterolemia. So this is very common scenario in live coding. And also you will get mixed hypercholesterolemia with hyperglyceridemia also. So here also you need to code mixed hyperlipidemia. And also one of the most common one is mixed hyperlipidemia and hyperlipidemia. So here you need to check for specificity, which is having the more specificity. For example, if you take hypercholesterolemia and hyperlipidemia, hypercholesterolemia is more specific than hyperlipidemia. So here we are coding hypercholesterolemia. For example, if you take mixed hyperlipidemia and hyperlipidemia, so here you need to understand that hyperlipidemia is unspecified. Okay. So based on ICD-10 CM guidelines, if the patient is having more specified condition as well as unspecified condition, obviously we need to code specified condition, correct? So here we need to use mixed hyperlipidemia. And one more common scenario is mixed hyperlipidemia and hypercholesterolemia. Okay. So here also mixed hyperlipidemia is more specific than hypercholesterolemia. So here also we need to use mixed hyperlipidemia as the final code. And also this one also more common, mixed hyperglyceridemia and mixed hyperlipidemia. So here we need to code E78.3 and E78.2. So this session is useful for the coders already working as a medical coder. And also this session is very useful for the coders who are planning to write their CPC examination. And also most importantly, this session is very useful for the coders who are planning to go for interviews. Why means most of the time if you go to interviews, they will ask you combination codes as well as versus conditions. So due to that reason, you need to remember all these combination codes wherever it is possible. And also one key important thing here you need to remember that even not related to hyperlipidemia and all these conditions, even whenever patient is having both specified condition as well as unspecified condition, we need to use the specified condition. So that is the most important guideline we need to remember while coding combination codes. And also if the patient is having multiple conditions where one is unspecified, one is specified, we need to code the specified condition as which is providing more information related to the patient's situation. Thanks for visiting our channel. If anyone looking for same-day surgery coding training, please send WhatsApp message to 707-526-3939. Please like, comment and subscribe if you like this session. And also try to share it maximum so that every coder can get benefit from this video.